So now it looks like it's cheaper.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
You know, I can still remember when Deepwater Wind's early proposals were coming through, and there was a lock on some electricity rates, and they were higher than we were normally seeing National Grid pay for the production. Governor Kacheri at the time was saying, listen, okay, here's what you got to do. You got to lock it in the rates. If you lock in the rates long term, you know, there's a market fluctuation situation that this could be. And I just, our guest and I were commiserating a little bit about the governor, because he's the former chief of staff for the governor, and he has now moved on to this industry and has grown this business into a very viable project, and now something we might be really counting on when it comes to electricity. And the industry itself is something that I think very few of us understand. And so tonight we will meet with Jeff Grybowski, who's the co-CEO of the new holding company for the Deepwater Wind project, and he'll explain to us what appears to be the good news, which is that technology, production, more availability is going to give us a chance to have electricity produced from it at a much lower rate. So stay tuned for that. Great to have you aboard. Let's cut in on a couple of things that are happening. The president today suggested that there might be landmines in the deal between Democrats and Republicans. You can see this headline and many others like it. Today he says he's going to sign the border deal, and then he's going to go fishing for the he's going to look for the landmines in the deal. I don't know if anybody's told the president the deadline's tomorrow to sign off on this deal between Republicans and Democrats on the border. There is so much less money for fencing, wall. I thought he had washed it away. I thought by the State of the Union message that he was talking about steel and barrier, and now he's still fighting for the wall, and he wants to finish the wall, and it is hard for, I don't care if you're part of the base, I don't care if you're what you consider yourself to be. Don't tell me that you can say that you know he's saying the same thing and speaking the same language one day after the next, because he just is not. Reportedly, he wants to go fishing for other money, in addition to the lesser money he's agreeing to in this deal. That's going to cause all sorts of legal wranglings, whether it's under an emergency declaration or whether it's just, you know, scooping. Can't do it. And there's going to be a brawl on it. We'll see. We'll see. The abortion battle here in Rhode Island is really interesting. This headline is a real pushback. So the pro-life, can I say that anymore? Or am I supposed to say the anti-abortion people? But the pro-life folks are touting this poll, which I believe reflects an accurate pulse of the community. 74% of Rhode Islanders say that they're uncomfortable with the concept of late-term abortion. Who would be comfortable with the concept of late-term abortion? The key in what's happening here is the codification attempt on the part of Democrats, progressives, whatever, to bring equity between Roe v. Wade and Rhode Island's law on abortion, because of the worry that a new Supreme Court could dismantle Roe v. Wade and make it a state's decision. And Rhode Island's laws are not up to speed with the current Roe v. Wade protections, so they say. And if you look at them, it's probably true. What they want to do, what one of the versions does is, whatever, is take the word health in addition to the word life protection for a mother as a determining factor for whether an abortion can occur. Health is very different from life, and I want to hear more of this debate. But there's no doubt that there's confusion and misunderstanding and different interpretations over whether late-term abortions in this state will become legal or regular. And that's going to have to be determined. I will tell you, the Speaker of the House knows that he wants to determine that. He may not let this bill come to the floor. He may let a more moderate bill come to the floor. But now it's time to dig in on this because it's no longer a shelf topic. You know, the abortion thing is just, you want to ring phones on a slow news day on a talk radio show, just say abortion and the lights go and I can tell you what the script is. This is a specific controversy in Rhode Island. We'll get to it here and on the radio in short shrift. In the meantime, one thing locally that I think is really fascinating, this headline is just part of a problem that former mayor and downtown developer Joe Paolino says he's dealing with. He tweeted this picture out yesterday from 2 days ago. This is from the top of his office tower. That reportedly is a fight that was happening at Kennedy Plaza, he says, between gang members. And he says this is a chronic situation. So take that stabbing story from a couple of weeks ago, this particular picture, and he says this is just a glimpse, a snapshot of what happens on a day out basis at Kennedy Plaza. And what he is saying is, look, you know, the intermodal bus transportation there, it shouldn't be there. You want to build a park in Kennedy Plaza downtown? Build a park. You want to add to the quality of life? Do that. But when you bring all the kids together, you know, and double that with the panhandlers, you got yourself kind of a frittata down there. He wants to see it moved, and he is suing the city, the state, and RIPTA for that. He talked to me on the radio yesterday about the ramifications.
Kennedy Plaza doesn't have good security, and they don't have it was never designed to be a bus depot. The biggest building in the state of Rhode Island, vacant for the past 7 years. Who the heck wants to spend $100 million on that building to fix it up and to get it occupied as long as Kennedy Plaza is looking the way it does today? It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, look, it's the front porch in the city of Providence, and I understand exactly what he's saying. And the funny thing is, for some reason, Paolino's got a lot of legacy juice, but a lot of people just distrust him and his motives because Joe's just trying to make a buck. You know what? We gotta know that the people who invest in the community are the people that carry the community. And Joe's not always right, but heaven's sake, I think this has got to be looked at, and this litigation is going to be fascinating. In the meantime, here's our subject matter for this evening. National Grid contract with this other company from, the Netherlands? The Danish?
Denmark.
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 Denmark's a country.
It is a country, yeah.
Just want to make sure
Yeah,
everybody
about 5
knows
million
that.
people.
Yeah. You been there?
I have, many times.
I would think so, since you merged with him. Jeff Grybowski is the now co-CEO of the new entity.
That's right.
You were the CEO of Deepwater.
That's right.
Is Deepwater is still identifiable within Ørsted, or no? Just folded
No,
in?
we merged into one new
You're
entity in the U.S., yeah.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, Dan.
Executive summary on what this is. This news seems to be good, that you're now projecting and are looking for the PUC to approve a deal to supply National Grid with electricity from the proposed wind farm at a rate that looks lesser than we thought it would be. Is that true?
That's all true.
Okay, give me the
so the
short shrift.
Next project. It's called Revolution Wind. It's about 20 miles south of the Rhode Island coastline, so in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Think roughly between Block Island and Martha's Vineyard. It's roughly where it would be. About 50 turbines. So that compares to the Block Island project of 5 turbines, so a lot larger. 400 megawatts of power. 400 megawatts is about what 270,000 homes use in a year. So it's a lot of power. About 25% of the power that Rhode Island uses every year is the equivalent of what this wind farm would produce in a year. So it's a lot of power. It's a big power plant. Would be in operation in 2023. So it takes us the next 4 or so years to get it built and up and running. And when we start producing power, the power starts at 9.8 cents in 2023 and stays flat for 20 years after. So if you were to take that 9.8 cents for 20 years flat and bring it back to today's dollars, kind of discount it back to today's dollars, it's about 7.5 cents. So it's the equivalent of paying 7.5 cents today.
And we were looking Block Island with the
Right.
project there.
We're around 26 cents right now. Yeah.
Forever.
It escalates over time. There's an inflation
So that's
factor.
a separate deal.
Exactly.
That deal will not be merged with this deal.
No, they're separate deals, but I think we can collectively think of, we've got 2 projects that are supplying the state.
Okay. You get that? All right. We'll dig into some more questions that I have on this, and we'll give you kind of a report that summarizes the whole situation when we come back. Stay with us. So this latest development on the wind energy, here's Eyewitness News' latest story.
Last year, Governor Gina Raimondo announced the state had picked Providence-based Deepwater Wind to build a new 400-megawatt offshore wind farm.
It means cleaner source of energy.
Deepwater, which is now part of the large Danish company Ørsted, is the same firm that built the country's first offshore wind farm, the small 5-turbine project now operating off Block Island.
And just in the last few years, it's really started to catch on.
During this week's taping of Executive Suite, Ørsted co-CEO Jeffrey Grybowski said the company expects to spend about $250 million on Revolution Wind and its 50 turbines.
More than 10 times larger than Block Island. And it will be a really big piece of offshore infrastructure that'll have the kind of capacity that you would normally expect from a big traditional power plant.
On Thursday, National Grid announced it has agreed on how much ratepayers should pay Ørsted for the electricity it generates, and the cost of offshore wind has come down sharply. Power from the Block Island wind farm currently costs 26.1 cents per kilowatt hour. Power from the new Revolution Wind project will only cost 9.8 cents.
This new project, Revolution Wind, will lower people's monthly utility bills by about 50 cents a month, and that'll be for the next 20 plus years once we go into operation.
Two places at once. There were ties on the other show. We don't do that here.
We're much more relaxed.
We're much more informal. The Block Island project was controversial. It feels like kind of
Was it?
The sequel.
I don't remember
Come on.
that.
People didn't want to see the turbines.
Yeah.
Give me an honest answer here. I know you will. You still getting complaints?
Very few. Very few.
Yeah, it's
You
good.
know, there are some folks who live on the southeast side of Block Island who have, in my view, a spectacular view of the wind farm. And some of those folks love the wind farm and some of them don't. But I think the majority of folks on Block Island have just considered it part of the community at this point.
You know, it's really
not that big a
interesting
deal.
because when you go to Europe and you look at the landscape, you can hardly not see
that's right.
turbines, right? And it's really, really interesting what is one person's aesthetic beauty and somebody else's aesthetic bother. I always kind of think they always intrigue me.
Well, and so they're new, and new things in your visual environment, they kind of stand out a bit more, but after a while, you kind of lose track of them. So next time you drive down a major road, look at the utility lines and the utility poles and all the wires. We don't normally even notice them on most days. They're just part of the landscape, and we get used to it over time.
Speaking of that and the different ways to transmit electricity, remind me what was happening with the Narragansett line that you were trying to put into the beach. That didn't happen, right?
Yeah, so the Block Island project is connected to Block Island first, and then we built a connection between Block Island and the mainland, because there was no electric connection between Block Island and the mainland, Rhode Island, until our project was built. So that connection from the island to the mainland, an electric cable, needed to plug in somewhere on the mainland. We initially proposed to land it at Narragansett Town Beach. The town didn't agree. Town council at least didn't agree. So the cable landed at Scarborough State Beach instead.
Okay, but that's connective to the Block Island project.
That's right.
Has nothing to do with this proposal.
It's totally separate. Yep.
So what happens with this Revolution Wind 50 turbine project? How many miles out now in the ocean?
20-ish so miles south of the coast.
And visual at all from our south coast?
Not at that distance.
Not to the naked eye?
No.
Okay. See it from Long Island? Anywhere? Can
You'll
anybody
see it? You'll see it when you
fly.
When you fly into TF Green, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You transmit that electricity here
Onshore.
How?
With a new electric cable that we'll bury in the seabed, and we'll land it on the coastline somewhere on the southern New England coast, either southeastern Massachusetts or Rhode Island, and plug it into the electric grid locally.
Is that approved? Or are you shopping for a spot?
We still have to go through the permitting process.
So what do you need
So
first?
are we shopping for a spot?
Yeah.
In a sense, we are shopping for a spot. We have a few alternatives that we're working on.
The PUC, our Public Utilities Commission, do they approve this project pre that landing spot
Yes.
getting done?
They approved the contract between us and National Grid. And after that contract gets through its process, we continue the permitting process. So federal and state environmental agencies, then they get their crack at the project.
Is this something?
So I've got to go through all those approvals before we actually go into construction.
Do you incentivize local communities to do this? Like you pay them some serious rent, or what's the story?
You generally enter into some kind of community benefit agreement with the landowner or the town. You know, every town's got different taxation issues. You might be landing on state property or town property, so it depends on the specific situation.
How big is this sucker? How big is it? How big
The
is
turbine?
No, the connective line. I mean,
Oh, the cable.
yeah, the cable. Is it
Yeah,
this big? Is
the
it this
cable
big?
is ballpark 10 to 12 inches.
That's it.
That's it.
For a 50 turbine
Yeah.
project supplying nearly 250,000 people with electricity on the mainland.
That's right.
You're going to send that sucker of electricity through a pipe this big?
It's about that big. Yeah, 10 to 12 inches.
That's weird.
It's amazing. It's technology, Dan.
Come on, you weren't.
It's technology.
You're not a technology guy at the beginning.
am
you're
now.
you're a lawyer.
I am now.
And a very sharp political mind, by the way. This has got to be a mind blower for you in terms of this
Yeah.
this thing that you got into.
Well, there aren't many times in life when you get to get involved in something like this at the early stage, right? And really grow up with this industry. And I was lucky that I had the opportunity to kind of get involved on the first floor as the elevator was going up. And for the last decade, I've grown together with this industry in the U.S., so it's a pretty unique circumstance.
When we come back, I want to talk about where this industry, and there you see the core product right out there in the water, where this industry melds with the other utility efforts that are going on around the region to try to, who's going to win? Or will it need to be a winner next? Again, you've seen these, and you're going to see, when you're flying over in a few years, you're going to see more if this project goes through. Former Deepwater, now Ørsted, is looking for PUC approval for 50 of those suckers out there in the ocean to provide some 250,000 worth of homes electricity through National Grid. Hopefully the grid's, the rate that the grid is going to pay for this electricity is what comparative to what they're paying for now?
Yeah, so it's lower than what they're paying for power now. So their blended cost of power, so the average cost of the National Grid pays for power is about a little under 11 cents. I think it's about 10.9.
What's your projection on?
And ours is 9.8. So we're about a penny or so under.
What's your projection on the consumer's cost there?
Yeah, our project will lower ratepayer bills by about 50 cents a month when we get started in 2023.
All right. Well, it's better than adding 50 cents a month, I guess. This technology, it seems to be almost too good to be true in some ways. The fishermen don't like it, or some don't like it.
Some don't like it.
We're going to get petitioned immediately to have them come on this program.
I'm sure.
And talk about the impacts.
Yep.
What's the true impact so far on Block Island? What have you seen?
To fishing, very little impact. So we've actually done some studies out there. And we've had some academics do some studies on what was fishing like before the wind farm was there and what's fishing like now after the wind farm has been there for a while. And those studies show that there are just as many fish as there were before. Same types of fish are there. The wind farm is doing what we expected it to do. It's become an artificial reef out there. If you look underneath the water line, you'll see mussels growing on it, and you'll see a lot of fish activity there. So there's been very little impact to fishing at the Block Island project. Fishing and offshore wind are two groups trying to use the ocean, right? So there's going to be some kind of conflict there. And we're the new kid on the block. So we have to work things out with the commercial fishermen. We need to find a way to work with them.
What have you done with them in Block Island? Anything formal?
So during construction, we had lots of agreements with fishermen to make sure that we knew where they were going to be and they knew where we were going to be. And we actually made some compensation to them when we told them, whatever you do, stay away from this area tomorrow because there's a lot of heavy activity going on.
We're going to pay you to stay away because we can't fish there while
That's
we're
right.
building.
That's right, because we're disrupting you over the next couple hours and you just have to stay away.
You got to do 10 times that with the new project?
Well, what we're trying to do is design the project to really have the least amount of impact on them as possible. If we design it the right way, fishing and offshore wind can coexist.
What is the right way?
Well, it comes down to where you space the turbines. How far apart are they? How you align them. So do you create a row, essentially an alley, between turbines so that fishing vessels can maneuver between those alleys as opposed to a more random pattern of turbines?
This Danish group that you merged with are not unfamiliar with this technology.
Very familiar with it. They're the world leader in developing offshore wind.
What's their experience with impact on fishing? What have they been able to bring to the table in terms of
Yeah,
informing you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of experience because there are thousands of megawatts offshore right now in operation. The first offshore wind farm was built in 1991 in Denmark. So we've got a couple decades of experience, and the experience shows that if you design a project the right way, fishing continues inside the wind farm.
Where do you sit in the whole where do we get electricity scheme? You got a power plant that has just had nothing but aggravation trying to get started in northern Rhode Island. We're always hearing about power plants, more going down than coming up. Is this going to be a dominant technology? Are we going to windmill our way into the next century, or what do you think?
Yeah, it's a big issue, and it's one of those issues we don't spend nearly enough time talking about as a society, right? Energy sector is really big. If you take all the parts of our economy, there aren't many aspects of our economy that have a bigger impact on lives or pocketbooks and energy,
Well, the major
right?
categories right now are coal, natural gas.
Yeah. So we've got there's a transition happening in the energy business in the U.S. but globally, right? Coal is largely decreasing as a percentage of the energy that we consume every year, right? We don't have any coal left in New England. The Brayton Point power plant was a big coal plant, was shuttered a little over a year ago now. So we're not going to see a whole lot of new build coal plants. We're probably not going to see a whole lot of new nuclear plants built in the United States, at least. I don't think in our lifetimes. So what are we left with? Really, natural gas and renewables. So those coal plants and nuclear plants, as they get old, because plants are just pieces of machinery, they get old, and you've got to mothball them at some point. Those old coal plants and nukes that we built in the 60s and 70s and 80s are coming to their end of their lifetimes. We've got to replace them with something. And largely, they're going to get replaced with natural gas and renewables. And I think offshore wind, at least in the Northeast, where we have really strong wind, is going to be the dominant renewable that we use.
How deep into the continent does this technology reach, you think? How many windmills? I mean,
yeah,
there's got to be.
Well, luckily,
I mean, we're sitting
luckily
pretty,
we're
but
coastal. We've
Right.
got these big coastal population centers.
Right.
So, offshore wind can serve the big coastal population centers. We're probably not going to serve Ohio with Atlantic offshore wind. They might be able to get some from the Great Lakes, but the coastal population centers, that Boston to Washington, D.C. corridor, we've got a lot of people packed along the coastline. Exactly the same place where it's hard to build something new, like a big onshore gas plant. Try putting one of those on Long Island or northern Rhode Island.
Right.
Really tough job. So you can build a renewable resource 25 miles offshore where you can't see it and plug it into the grid at the coast.
All right, you want the PUC to thumbs up? That's why you're doing this PR stuff. What's the quick timeline? I got 30 seconds.
Probably by the end of the spring, early summer.
Any major obstacles I'm missing here, or is it?
No, I think it's a great deal for ratepayers, and we're going to create a lot of jobs doing it. So,
How many?
800 or so construction jobs, 50 or so permanent folks.
All right. You'll have to take me out to one of these turbines at one point.
You've got a standing invite.
I don't want to step on any muscles, but good to see you, man. Jeff
All right, thanks,
Grybowski,
Dan.
CEO, co-CEO of the new company. Interesting stuff. Tell you what's next. Restorative justice. Sounds like a really deep term. It seems to be the new theme in our schools in terms of how you go about disciplining and creating an environment for learning for the kids. Problem is, the teachers are told to use it, and most don't know what it is. An expert on it tomorrow here on the program. We'll see you on the radio or talk with you, of course, between 3 and 6 on WPRO. See ya.